Hi guys and welcome back. For a while now I've been testing tons of digital transports and streamers such as EBRAVO DMP-A6, DMP-A8, FIO R7, R9, S15 and also Matrix Mini i4, and all of those are quite impressive in terms of feature set, flashy displays, beautiful layout. But today I'll try a very different streamer and digital transport that focuses mostly on the sound quality. Yes, the sound quality is actually the top priority for the KECES EBRAVO streamer, especially when powered by this complementary P6 linear power supply. This one will cost you $599 US, and if you add the P6 then the whole package will be at around $1,000 US, and I think it's the right time to check it out. This is not my first KECES that I'm trying on this channel, more like my fourth device. You might observe that I'm using a KECES balanced power conditioner for a while now with my stereo. I have a smaller one and also a bigger one, but this bigger one is powering 7 devices on my audio rack, and my audio system never sounded better, and that is not an exaggeration at all. I tried quite a few power conditioners over the years, but the KECES simply sounded better, and since these guys were also flashing over the social media their new EBRAVO streamer, I decided to give it a try in the comfort of my home. The build quality is excellent on both devices, although the P6 is built slightly nicer because we have a fully CNC machined aluminum case, but this one is also quite nice, so I don't have many complaints. We have the same metallic feet with rubber inlays. It looks quite stealthy, which I like, and also it's not a very big unit as well, so you can accommodate it even in a HiFi battle station, for example. It looks quite industrial and not so flashy, but that's a plus in my case because my Rockna Wavedream Net also doesn't have a big colorful display. The P6 power supply is considerably heavier, mostly because we have a big linear transformer inside, a series regulation stage, filtering stage, plenty of capacitors, but the good part is that they have absolutely the same bodies, so you can stack them together for a pretty nice and minimalist streaming setup. They don't get hot almost at all. I measured 38 degrees Celsius on the P6 power supply after 8 hours of non-stop music playback, and 28 degrees on the EBRAVO, so you can stack them together and you can use them basically 24 hours a day. That wouldn't be a problem. Checking out their controls, inputs and also outputs, this is where the EBRAVO might disappoint some of you, because except for an optical output, coaxial and AAC output, this is basically everything. We don't have an USB output or I2S output, but maybe the next generation or maybe a beefier streamer coming from KECES will have those must-have digital outputs. The EBRAVO accepts wireless signals via Bluetooth and also via Wi-Fi, or wired via Ethernet or USB Type-A. The EBRAVO can be powered by a switching mount power supply or by the P6 linear power supply that is marginally boosting its performance. The P6 wasn't made only for the EBRAVO, that is very important. It can power plenty of devices with DC inputs, offering multiple voltages outputs such as 5, 7, 9 and 12 volts on the zone 1 and 15, 19 and 24 volts on the zone 2. If you get the EBRAVO and P6 bundle, then you'll get 2 DC cables, including a DC adapter to power the EBRAVO, and if you want a fancier DC cable to connect these two, then KECES offers separately the Valentina DC cables that use premium materials, nicer conductors and nicer DC plugs that supposedly should further elevate the performance of the EBRAVO. I won't talk too much about what can be found inside the EBRAVO and P6, but I will just mention that this one is galvanically isolating every input and output, so Forget about noise scrolling through Ethernet or Wi-Fi. Its circuit is very simple. It's incredibly simple actually, but sometimes simplicity and a short signal path is everything you need for a natural sound reproduction. Instead of focusing on what's inside the EBRAVO, let's focus on how you can use the EBRAVO and what are the ways to control it. But first of all, I want to mention that in my humble opinion, I believe it sounds best via Ethernet, then Wi-Fi comes next, leave a long blank space, and then Bluetooth basically is at the last place, so I do not recommend using Bluetooth. If you don't have an Ethernet cable nearby, just use Wi-Fi and it will sound just fine. Once the Ethernet cable is connected or the Wi-Fi antenna screwed in, simply download and launch the 4Stream app found on Google Play Store or Apple Store and follow the steps appearing on the screen. Once the EBRAVO is connected to the internet, you have two options: using native apps such as Tidal and Spotify and stream music to it via Tidal Connect and Spotify Connect, or you can use the 4Stream app that offers additional streaming services that will be controlling within the app, such as Qobuz, Deezer, TuneIn, SoundCloud, and many other services. If you attach an external flash drive or SSD filled with music to the USB Type-A input, then the music files would appear in My Library. Within the app, you can also enable a graphic or parametric equalizer. You can save the EQ, and then your offline or online music collection will go through this EQ before being sent out to the DAC for decoding. If EQ is your thing, then you can add some coloration to your music, depending on your preference, of course. And since Qobuz is my primary streaming platform, I used it most of the time, followed by Tidal throughout this evaluation, and I must say that both worked just fine. I had all of my playlists, my favorite tunes were also there, so I could stream music right away. I also tried Tidal Connect and it worked just fine, but sometimes I needed to re-establish the connection with the EBRAVO, especially when the sample rate was changing. If Tidal or Spotify are your main streaming platforms, then I would use Tidal Connect and Spotify Connect, since the original apps are still a bit easier to use and are more user-friendly. Sound-wise, I used AAC output most of the time to my brand new Rockna reference signature DAC. By the way, the reference signature DAC review will be coming in around 2, maybe 3 weeks. I'm still not 100% healthy. I've got COVID 8 days ago, but finally brain fog is no longer an issue. My voice is an issue, and moving around is also an issue, but I'm getting better, so don't worry. I believe it sounds slightly better via AAC. Coaxial comes next and optical would be the last. But of course, if you don't have coaxial or AAC input on your DAC, you can use optical, no problem. That will be, will sound just fine. And I must confess that after trying all of those streamers with flashy displays, with lots of features which everybody is searching for, those from Eversolo, the MPA6, the MPA8, all those FIO units, that small matrix unit, I like them all. I mean, the feature set was actually quite amazing, the app control was amazing, they had every possible digital output, so that is very important, of course. But the sound quality was not on the same level with my Rockna Wavedream Net that uses a monochrome display that doesn't have an app control. It's very bare bones, very simple in a way, but the sound of the Rockna is simply on a much higher level. It's much more dynamic, organic, much more natural sounding, and very, very holographic sounding, something that the Eversolos and the FIOs simply could not provide. But at the same time, the Rockna is considerably more expensive. Now, around 2 days ago, I started listening to the EBRAVO powered by the P6 linear power supply, and for about 4, maybe 5 hours straight, I couldn't stand up from my chair, from the sofa actually, because the sound was shockingly very similar to the Rockna. Very natural, very organic, very dynamic and punchy, the bass. The bass was actually a big shock. I didn't expect it to be so punchy. Definitely on another level compared to any other, Eversolo, FIO, and so on, and Matrix Mini i4. So this is not the most resolving or the most transparent sounding streamer, but it's definitely doing some things when it comes to naturalness, putting lots of meat on the bone and simply sounding considerably more organic. So if you want to awake some emotions and while listening to music, this is definitely that kind of streamer. It makes you move while you listen to your favorite tunes, that is for sure. The EBRAVO is not your Prince Charming when it comes to looks, that is for sure. Also, it doesn't have the nicest digital outputs like USB or I2S, for example. The app control is okay, but not really outstanding. But if you care for the sound quality only and you can discard all of these cons that I just mentioned, I believe it sounds very impressive and very close to the top streamers that have tried up to this point. It sounds like music with all of its beautiful intricacies, overtones, the tone of the music feels just right. There is absolutely zero listening fatigue or digital glare. It sits on the opposite pole to that, sounding thick, sweet and colorful, exactly as music is supposed to sound. The striking part came when some groovy electronica started music and Her Majesty, the bass, made its grand appearance. The bass didn't come in peace, as it usually comes with those streamers that I just mentioned before, but it was raging worse with the rest of the frequency response. The bass was definitely something else and something that I've heard right from the start, and I'll say it right from the start right now. If your system is lacking bass definition, bass depth, bass punch, and you consider yourself maybe a bass head, then this one works mostly like a magic pill. It's really something else compared to all of the streamers that I just mentioned in terms of bass definition, punch, control, quantity, and quality-wise. I know it also has an EQ, so you can play with the EQ, but EQ is not my thing. I usually try to assess the sound of the streamers or the units that are coming with EQ in the stock form. So of course you can, play with that, but I decided to assess its performance with the EQ turned off. And even without applying any kind of EQ, the bass was definitely playing on a different level compared to mid-range and treble. It's definitely adding a little bit of energy in there, a few dB. But I consider with the systems that have bookshelf speakers, or maybe your room is lacking a little bit of low-end rumble, then the EBRAVO is just adding those missing dBs in the bass. The bass coming out of this thing can be a little bit intimidating at first, but please let it play for around 50 to 100 hours and the bass will get much more impressive in terms of quality. You'll get more layers of it, you'll get beautiful overtones in the bass, you'll not get that one-note bass, but more impressive with tremors, rumbles, so it will get better in terms of quality as well. And being impressed by the bass region in a blues track is not something anybody would expect, but this fellow infuses lots of energy exactly in this region. The next part that I want to talk about would be Soundstage, stereo separation and imaging. Some of the units that I tried up to this point were quite impressive in this regard, like DMP A8 by Eversolo, like 5S15. Those were really quite impressive in terms of imaging, soundstage, depth, holography, and so on and so forth. But smaller units like Matrix Mini i4, like FIO R7 and also Eversolo DMP A6, not so impressive, so putting me much closer to the music and more like in the first or second row in a big concert hall, so not exactly big and holographic sounding. Well, I don't have the switching mode power supply, so I could make a comparison with the switching mode power supply and the P6. When powered by the P6 linear power supply, the sound is definitely not putting me on the first row and more like on the 10th row, so I can appreciate from where the sounds are coming from. This combo is simply placing me at a greater distance from the performance, so I could easily perceive the distance between me and the soloist, between me and the drummer, so on and so forth. The so-called air in between the notes is quite apparent on this combo, especially when you start listening to your childhood tunes. and suddenly it feels like you have an extra woofer on your speakers. The effect is there, and you won't need lots of time to start appreciating the extra depth and holography effects kicking in. We audiophiles often forget why we started this hobby. It was not for the love of gear, it was not for the love of cables, it was for the love of music. And this attachment to music is sometimes lost in transit. I know a few folks that reached legendary status with their stereo setups just to find out a few months or years later that they sold everything and moved to other hobbies. I'm sorry, but I cannot be like that. Music is part of me. Music is exactly what elevates me, what makes me a better person, what's unlocking my imagination, and that's why I love shooting these videos and writing my articles about audio gear and about music as well. This EBRAVO is reminding me once again why I love shooting these videos and why I love listening to music. It simply puts me in a different state of mind, one where I'm one with the music and not one where I'm evaluating the music. In the end, is this the perfect wired and wireless streamer, digital transport and music server? It isn't. I mean, we don't have a USB output and also I2S output. I consider those to be the most important digital connections you can have between a streamer and a DAC, and sadly, we don't have them on the EBRAVO. Also, the app control is not the most intuitive or impressive. For example, you won't find Apple Music in that list, and many other streaming services are not included as well. However, if you happen to use Tidal, Qobuz or Spotify, and you made peace with yourself that optical, coaxial and AC connection is good enough between it and your DAC, then I see 100 reasons why this one is better sounding compared to any other streamer that I have tested on this channel so far. It goes without saying that this is currently my favorite streamer below or at around 1,000 US dollars or euros, because it does proper justice to music and music lovers all around the world. Starting with stereo separation and finishing with strong dynamics, punchy bass lines, thick tone and natural timbre, it infused a serious dose of dopamine while listening to music, and it would do the same things to you. A highly impressive award was fully justified considering my experience with this one, but I hope a more feature-packed unit will be released in the future that will solve all of the cons that I previously mentioned. That's it, thanks for watching, please consider liking and subscribing if you found this video helpful, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers!